Welcome back, everybody, to Still a Part of Us. We are excited to have Rebecca here and to continue our conversation about her daughter, Adrian, who she just told her really sweet, heartbreaking story. But we're so grateful that we know a little bit more about who she is and yeah, that she was here. And so thank you so much for coming back on, Rebecca, and just having a conversation with me.
Yeah, yeah.
As a reminder to everyone, I would just say go listen to Adrian's little birth story. It was so sweet. But can you tell us a little bit about who Adrian is and how long ago she was born?
Yeah. Adrian Jewel, she was born November 4th, 2021. And so she'd be coming up on 2 years
Yeah.
in the next few months.
And she was stillborn but with no apparent cause or
Yeah,
anything.
that's right. Yep. We're never given an answer. She was perfect in every way.
Yeah. And nothing and the other thing that is like it always feels a little frustrating where you like everything looks good on your end, everything looked
Hmm.
good on her end. And
Right.
so that would be it's a little maddening sometimes, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. You're like, well, if everything looks good, then why?
What?
Like,
Yeah,
why did her heart stop?
yeah. That just
How
doesn't
how does it
happen.
yeah, how does it just stop? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
That
it'll
is
always be confusing.
yeah. Since that time she was born, so it's been almost 2 years at the time of this recording, how has the grief and how has your mourning, looked? And maybe describe, like, at the very beginning of when you guys got home after her funeral, after her memorial service. What did that look like in those early days? And then how has it changed, over time?
I mean, the early days are the worst part
Mhm.
of the grieving process, and I think everybody's early days, it's different for everybody, like, sometimes those early days can take months, sometimes for other people it's weeks. um, I don't remember how long we were in that phase of just numbness, because that is what it was. I felt numb, I didn't I wasn't interested in the things that I'm normally interested in. I remember that we went and we saw a movie that we were really excited for, and it was a couple weeks after she had passed, and we just needed to get out and do something that,
Right.
we thought we would enjoy, and I couldn't even focus on the movie. I and it just felt like this is supposed to be something that I like, and I can't even follow this movie. I like it just and that's how it was for, like I said, I can't remember exactly, a couple months probably of just feeling like I was, like, living and, like, going through the motions, but like a zombie.
Yeah. Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly how it feels is you are numb and just
Yes.
not quite all there.
Crying every day,
Yeah.
all day.
Yeah. And not knowing why you can't stop crying.
Yes, yeah. And I know, like I mentioned, in the the other episode we did, my son, who's on the autism spectrum,
Right.
he he knew that, like, something was up with us too, and he it was interesting to see how he kind of course, we were giving him all the attention and love that we could once he was brought back home, and, you know, we were together, the 3 of us again, but he could tell that something was off, and
Oh.
he was so sweet during that time. Like, he would just come up and give us hugs and snuggle with us, and
Oh.
you could tell just kinda, like, by those little actions that he did that he could also feel like there was something going on. But, we slowly started to move out of that initial numbness, but it took time.
It's not an overnight process.
No. I remember my grandma called me once, like, in the early days,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
she said my grandpa has passed away years and years ago,
Mhm.
and so she was, just kind of relating with me on that level of, we've both lost someone so dear to us, and she was just saying, like, one day you're not going to cry. Like, you will get to that point where there will finally be a day that you don't cry.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, "Well, when is that day gonna come?
Right.
I'm tired of crying."
Yes. One day. One day. And
Right.
yeah, you can't ever say well, and I like the way you said it. You're like some people's early days are really short and a few weeks, and others are many months, and I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, those early days are just that's a great way of putting it. It's the early days of mourning, and they're the hard ones. They're the ones that are so it feels so intense and also totally numbed, like kind of this dual-sided
Yeah.
part of grief. And then as you guys have gone, as a few months have as time has passed on, how were you guys able to adapt and continue to mourn her, and how did that look?
Um, I think something that Parker and I are really good at is communicating with each other.
Mm,
And I know that that's like that's a huge thing in marriage, obviously. And I know that it's
yes.
something that a lot of people work at and, struggle with. And it's something that we've worked at a lot. And,
Right.
I think that we had gotten to a really good place in our marriage where we were good at communicating with each
Mhm,
other.
mhm.
And, not just about like, day-to-day things and planning, but communicating about our emotions and our feelings. And so we were very good at being like, I'm having a horrible day today, or today was really, really hard for me. And all I could do was cry about Adrian all day long.
Mhm.
And both of us were able to, Parker would come home from work and say, like, I could not focus at work today because all I could think about was Adrian. Um, and just talking about it actually like really, really helped both of us sort of, process and then come out of that initial shock,
Yeah,
the hardest part of grief.
yeah. That is well, I'm just gonna say that's commendable because there's some really high statistics of, marriages breaking up after something this big of as big as a loss as this.
Right.
And so the fact that you guys were able to use kind of the skills that you had already, which is great, to be able to help each other through that, is good because and then sounds like you guys acknowledged each other's feelings, not just communicating, but like, yeah, that is, you
Right.
you helped each other through it.
Yeah, yeah, and we allowed each other to have those hard moments.
Mhm,
Like, we felt comfortable enough with each other that we could tell each other,
mhm,
first off, "I'm not having a good day, that this is how I'm feeling." And then, the other was able to give the one who's having a hard time space or, just we were allowing each other to feel what we needed to feel.
mm,
We weren't placing, like, any expectations on each other, like, we were just going through it with each other. Like, we were the only 2 who experienced it like that,
yeah,
and so we had to lean on each other because nobody else knew what we were feeling.
yeah. And that is really I I don't know, it's commendable. I think it's great that you guys were willing to give each other space and time. And because yeah, and the expectation, it's amazing how if you're like, "Oh, I why aren't you crying all the time?" Or "Why aren't you done crying?"
Right.
It's kind of one of those things where you just the expectations you have for your spouse sometimes can be tricky
Yeah,
because that could sabotage you in thinking that they're not sad enough or they're not
right.
doing it right, I guess.
Yeah. I'm glad that we did have that understanding of each other, that we do grieve differently, that we
Mhm.
feel differently. There are things that Parker does in his grief that help him a lot more than they help me.
Mm.
Parker, started going to the support groups
Oh,
that,
okay.
like the bereavement
Yeah, yeah.
teams hold, and that is something that has been a huge help for him, and it's also not something that very many of the dads do.
Not at all.
No, but for him, that's been really good and really healing, and for me, I haven't gone to a support group outside of their, like they've had 2 Christmas activities since
Mm,
we've lost Adrian that I've gone to,
yeah.
and I'll go to those ones, and it's not like that I don't enjoy talking to people, it's not anything like that, I think for me, I don't know that I would feel healing so much as I would it would, bring up these feelings of sadness again, and these stories are heavy,
Mhm.
and I wasn't sure I'm still not sure if, going once a month and hearing all these heavy stories is something that would be healing for me or that would kinda bring me down,
Right.
and it is different for everybody. Like I said, for Parker, it's healing, and for me, I think I don't know. don't know if I can do that.
Yeah. And I think that is wise to just kind of know where you might be at for and what might be helpful
Yeah.
to you at any given time. Because I'm gonna. That's the other thing that's been surprising to me is that in our grief, like it's been 5 years for us, and there were times when it was very comforting to be at a support group, and now it's different. So I don't need to do that. I do other things to help me, process things. So yeah, I think you just need to know yourself and that helps a lot when it comes to grief. And sometimes you don't know it. With grief, especially if it's new, it's a new
Mhm.
thing to you, then you may not know what helps. So you
Right.
may have to try a few things out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What has helped you personally to process and maybe even feel close to Adrian?
I really am able to clear my mind when I'm, like, exercising, when I'm moving my body, and
Okay,
so
yeah.
when I was finally, like, at a good place where I could start
Physically
yeah,
exercising.
right, like, after a C-section, you've gotta be a little
Mhm.
gentle with yourself, but, like, just getting that movement, like, daily movement into my schedule, like, did wonders for just giving me a moment to clear my head, like, that was, like, my me time where
Yeah.
I could, like, clear my head, like, I just had to, like, put so much focus on just, getting this hard workout in, and then I don't know, I feel a lot of healing from being able to exercise.
I
It
agree.
Yeah, and I mean, right, there's studies done, right?
There are tons of studies done, and I think that is, like, actually
Yeah,
moving your body is so, so helpful,
right.
like, for everybody.
Especially when you don't want to. Like,
Ye yes.
when you would rather just sit on the
Yeah.
couch and be sad, scroll on your phone, like,
Yeah.
those were the times especially that I was like, "I need to get up and I need to move around and do something, and I'm
Mhm.
gonna feel better." And it doesn't fix everything, but it does help. And I I actually started, maybe, like, 4 months, 3 or 4
Mm,
months.
mhm.
It was enough time out that I was pretty healed. I started a martial arts program.
Oh,
It was
really?
something that, like, I had always wanted to do,
Oh,
but I had never pushed myself to do it
yeah.
because it seemed scary, or, like, I always worried that I would be bad
Mhm.
and that I would make a fool out of myself and that I would just look completely ridiculous trying to do these
Yeah.
things. But I also felt like I have enough of a solid, like, I know how to work out, like, I know
Yeah.
how to exercise. I feel like I could maybe do okay doing a martial art, and I just but I so I was, like, telling Parker about this, and I'm like, "I
Uh-huh.
don't know if I can push myself to do this," and he ended up calling a place and, like, signed me up for me, and he was like, "You just need to do it. Like, if
Yeah.
you're feeling too timid about it, I've already called them. I've, like, made the payment, so you have to go."
Sorry.
So
We've sunk the money, so
yeah, yeah, so I I did start that, and it was actually so fun, and it was another way that I could get out.
Yeah.
It was a way that I didn't have to be in the house, like, sitting in my sometimes you need to sit in your
Yeah.
feelings, but you need to be able to get out and do other things for yourself,
Yeah.
like, have something to look forward to,
Mhm.
and so I did that up until I got pregnant with this baby that I just had a
Yeah.
couple months ago, and that was so fun. It was
Think that's
It was
so
huge.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, and when you said a martial art, and I was like, yeah, there is something. I'm not saying that it is aggressive, but it is like, right? There's defensive, offensive. Like
Yeah.
there are like some very physical movements, and there's something to be said about sometimes doing a hard workout or things where that
Right.
requires punching or kicking or pounding or
Mhm.
whatever. There's some aggression that gets
Yes,
that
it
comes
gets those
out.
emotions out, yeah.
Yeah.
The one that I do is called Krav Maga.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like a combination of kickboxing and self-defense, so
Right.
there is a ton of punching and
Yes.
kicking, and there are, like, very few women,
That
at
actually,
least in the class that I was in.
yeah.
There wasn't a lot of women, most of them are men, but so I felt like I could hit these pads that they were holding as hard as I could, 'cause the guys are gonna be stronger than me most of the time, so
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I was gonna, like, knock
Right.
anybody over. I'm like, "I can just go for it. I can hit this as hard as I
Yeah.
want." And it is so fun, and it did
Oh,
help
that's
me so much, and I wanna start again.
yeah.
I took that break
Yeah,
when
of
I was
course,
pregnant,
obviously.
and as soon as I'm at a good place, I wanna go back. I got up to my orange belt.
Uh-huh. That's awesome.
I wanna get a black belt. I mean, I'm still like, I won't be amazing, but if I can get a
Yeah.
black belt,
Well, there's
that
just
would be cool.
there's so much discipline in doing that so that you can progress to those
Yeah.
different levels. I think that's rad. I think that's so cool that you did that.
I'm proud of myself, and I'm like, I'm not anything special, but it's fun. It's really
Yeah.
fun.
And I like what you said earlier was that it was something that you could look forward to
Mhm.
because like you there's not like you feel like there's nothing to look forward to for a
Right.
long while there.
Yeah.
And to have something small, even just that is there's something kind of nice about that.
Right, yeah, and it was a way to get me out of the
Yeah.
house, and when you're just in your house all the time, like, that can be detrimental sometimes, like, you need to be able to get out and
Yeah.
change up your pace, and, like, I wasn't working. That was one of the things, I
Oh,
stopped
yes.
working
Yes.
when we found out that I was pregnant, or, I finished that school year teaching,
Mhm.
um, because I thought that I was gonna be raising 2 kids,
Yeah.
and I still had Harrison to raise, and it was still the right choice to be at
Mhm.
home with him, but I didn't have that extra child to take care of that I thought I was gonna have, and so I was at home a lot, and so being able to get out of the house
Was something to
was
look forward to.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because a lot of I had the benefit, and that sounds weird to have that I got to go back to work so that I
Mm,
could kinda get back on a schedule and get out of the house and not
right.
sit and ruminate sometimes because
Mhm.
sometimes you can kinda just, like, spiral with your
Yeah,
thoughts.
right.
Ah, yes.
You need something to just kinda, like, pull your mind away for a
Yep.
minute, not I don't know if
Not
distracting yeah,
forever,
not
but
yeah, like, you wanna be able to feel, both things. You need your time to grieve, but you need your time to just separate a
yeah.
little bit.
'Cause your brain cannot handle that much like,
That
sadness
much sad.
all the time.
No.
That is hard on you emotionally and physically, like, it will start wearing on you, so
Right.
I think it's good to have that kind of break if you can.
Yes.
So I wanted to kind of jump over to, something that I generally ask a lot of people, but it's been 2 years, right? I just wanna know what are some things that you found to be the most helpful that other people did for you, or what other people said to you that resonated or was helpful in your processing or just feeling like maybe you were not alone in this.
Yeah. One of the big things was we had a lot of people, like, reach out to us and
Yeah.
say, "What can I do? I wanna do something for you," and I kept telling them, like, "I don't really know what you can do for me, but just the fact that you're saying that is enough."
Yeah.
Like, it really is, and we had people come in and bring us food, and that was huge. I was super grateful for that,
Yeah.
and, that made a world of difference. But I would tell the people too that would just say, "I want to do something for you, but I don't know what. Like, tell me what to do." And I honestly, like, I was not at a place where I could really, like, divvy out tasks to people,
Right.
but it really did mean the most that they were just offering, that, like, I knew that, like, they were offering because they genuinely wanted to help. I
Mm.
try to remind myself that, like, sometimes I don't wanna, like, inconvenience people, or, like, if somebody offers to help me, I tend to feel like, "Oh, I they don't need to help me, like, I don't wanna inconvenience them," but
Mhm.
I have to remind myself, like, "No, they're the ones that offered, so they should be genuine about it." I assume that they're
Yes.
genuine, and so we try to take advantage of that where we could, but most of the time, I would just tell people, "I just appreciate you saying that and thinking of us, and you don't have to do anything because I can't think of anything,
Mhm.
but I'm just grateful that you want to." Like,
Yes.
that's enough. Because it makes me feel like they do care and that they do love us.
They love you and they acknowledge that you had a baby. Like,
Yeah.
that's tough work too. So
Right.
that yeah, that's huge, like, when people acknowledge that, I just wanna point that out. I'm gonna just tack on there because I think I say this often and I harp on this as well, but even more what you said is that there were people that, like, just showed up with food. And
Yeah.
sometimes you just need to show up, even though you're asking to help in some way.
Right.
Once again, you might not have the person that has lost a baby probably doesn't know what they need at any given point. So if you just show up sometimes with
Yeah.
food and treats and some distraction, and they might just appreciate you showing up that way too. So
Yeah.
just as another thought of advice, 'cause that really helps when people would just show up and like, "I didn't wait to sign up for a time to bring you a meal, but here's a meal.
I
Stick
just
it in
did
your
it
freezer."
anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And eat it when you want.
Yeah. That means the most.
Yeah. I am curious if there were any things that people did that you would maybe recommend they not do this and or say. I don't
Oh,
want you to call anybody out, but I it's always
right.
nice just to because I before my loss, I did and
Oh,
say
yeah.
all the things that I am like, "Oh, I would not do that anymore if
Right.
now that I know how it sounded to me having
Mhm.
lost a baby." So, is there anything that you would recommend not like certain things that maybe you wouldn't have people do or say so that it just helps a little bit better?
Yeah. One of the things that was said, and I will say that 95% of the people who helped us and talked to us were great. And even the 5% that maybe didn't say the best things or do the best things, they
Yeah.
were well-meaning,
Yes.
but it just didn't cross great. And,
Okay.
we've had a couple of times people would say to us, "Well, like, she's in a better place, like, she was just needed on the other side more." And that I I really only remember once, maybe twice that it was said, but that's a devastating thing to hear because, from my perspective, it's like she was needed more on the other side. I needed her.
Yeah.
I like she was definitely needed here.
Yeah.
So saying that she was needed somewhere else doesn't help me at all. Like
Yeah.
I think that I need her more
Yeah.
than wherever she's needed elsewhere.
Yeah. A little bit of those kind of like religious platitudes can, I believe, also in the afterlife and everything. But yes, it kind of stings where you're like, no, she was really wanted here. I'm pretty sure she was wanted here,
Yeah, yeah.
and so yeah, I think that is hard to hear sometimes.
Yes. Oh, another one, it's not so much like what people say, it's rather what they don't say.
Oh, okay.
And I have been guilty of this. I think before we experienced Adrian's loss, I was the person who like I remember when my brother-in-law was diagnosed with cancer
Hmm.
and he he told the whole family and I assume that, all of my brothers and sisters-in-law, like they all like reached out to him and were expressing their sorrow and just their support and love for him, and I didn't know what to say, and it wasn't that I didn't care about him.
Right.
I was devastated to hear this news, but I did not know what to say, and so for way too long, I never reached out to him because I didn't know what to do, and I finally did, and I told him, "I'm so sorry that it's taken me so long, I just don't know what to say." So I used to be like that,
Hmm.
but experiencing what we've experienced with Adrian, I realize now that it's better to say something than to not say anything at all, and so
Yeah.
I deeply regret not reaching out to my brother-in-law sooner because I now know how it feels to have people not say anything to you,
Yeah.
and you feel like you don't know what they're thinking because they haven't reached out to you. Like, from my perspective, it felt like, do they not care? Or
Yeah.
does it not matter to them as much because they haven't said anything?
Hmm.
I would rather and you can literally say, "I don't know what to say,"
Yeah.
but just acknowledging just the acknowledgement of what I've been through, and I don't wanna be the center of attention at every gathering, at every conversation, but just I want some kind of acknowledgement sometimes, especially I mean, I'm okay now, but those early months, the
Yes.
first year, getting together with people and just having it not brought up at all or not being asked how I was at all felt like and I'm trying to see it from other people's perspective
Yeah.
that maybe they thought that they were worried that bringing it up would be triggering or they didn't want to remind me of bad
Yeah.
memories. In reality, though, you can't remind me of something that I haven't forgotten.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, Adrian's
Yep.
always gonna be there, I haven't forgotten her, and yeah, there are sad memories, but she's my child and I love her, and I want to know that people care and that they think of her, and so that's where I hope the silence is coming from, is that they don't want to
Yeah. Bring it up.
bring it up. they worry about how I'm going to feel,
Yeah.
but at least from my perspective, and I would think from other people's perspectives too, I would rather them say something. And if I am in a place or other people are in a place where they really don't want to talk about it, then you can tell people,
Mhm.
I don't feel like I want to talk about it right now, but thank you so much for thinking of
Yes.
me. And maybe when I'm at a better place, I will be okay to talk to you about it. But not saying anything at all sometimes feels like you're not thought of.
Yes. Yes. I think yes, I agree with you completely with that because it
Yeah.
really I yes, and I do think that people are well-meaning, and they
Mhm.
probably are thinking that exact same
Yes.
thing of like, "I just don't wanna bring it up, she's gonna start crying."
Right.
And I'm gonna just say, be okay sitting with somebody that cries. It's okay, right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
like before I was so awkward about that kind of thing, but I'm like nowadays I'm like, yeah, let's cry. Let's do it.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you that not having even any sort of acknowledgement is hard. And I want to say friendships kind of fall away because of that. I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes any sense, but
Yeah.
I think I've seen that in my life of just like, oh, okay, well, you didn't really show up for me in the way that I needed at the time, and so
And then you don't know where to go from there.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I I've yeah, I think other people have felt that as well, and I know I have to an extent. And yeah, one other thing I think that was kind of brought up a couple of times with
Mhm.
different people. The thing is, like, we all go through hard things. Like,
Yes.
if you haven't gone through something hard, like, be prepared because
It's coming.
you're somebody in your life is going to die. Like, it's
Yes.
going to have, like, we lose parents. That's just
Yeah.
part of life. Whether it's, more expected like a parent or it's unexpected like a child,
Mhm.
like, we're all going to have hard things. But where it gets kind of messy is that I don't want people comparing their grief to my
Mhm.
grief.
Mhm.
And I think I experienced that a few times where it felt like maybe they were seeing my grief as not as big compared to what they were going through, maybe with
Oh,
a different loss that they were dealing with or some other hard thing that they were going
yeah.
through. And I kind of felt that just from I don't know, different interactions with people sometimes, that it felt like they didn't truly see me and the pain that I was in, because they felt like
Maybe their loss was
their loss was
bigger
bigger or more
and
important, and it felt like they were maybe undervaluing
yeah.
what I was going through. And it's not a competition. Grief isn't a
No,
competition.
we would not want to be
Yeah.
we don't wanna be in this
We're
competition.
all sad together.
Yeah, let's just be sad together. I don't just
Yeah.
there's a group of, women that I interact with, and we joke about ourselves being the sad moms because 'cause we're just the
Yeah.
we're sad together. And
Yeah.
yeah, grief is loss is hard, and
Right.
it doesn't even have to be a loss of somebody like, um, a death of somebody. It could just be like people go through divorces, people go
Right.
through,
Yeah.
yeah, cancer scares or whatever, and I mean, it's okay to just be sad and bummed out about it altogether.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, like, this was all of these things are things that I'm working on too. Like,
Yes.
with
Yes.
I was so quiet about reaching out to people before I experienced a tragedy of my own. And so it's something that I work on too. And none of us are perfect. And so
Mhm.
that's why I try to remind myself too that people are well meaning,
Yes.
but we can all try to be the very best that we can be.
Yes. Yeah. We can show up for people, and
Yeah.
that's they will remember that. I feel like they will remember that. Yes, and we're always working on
Yes.
ourselves, to be better, to show up better for people and for ourselves too.
Exactly.
So as you guys have navigated, another baby,
Yeah.
I know this is a really loaded question, but how was that pregnancy?
So hard.
Tell us a
So,
little bit
so
more
hard.
about that. I don't think people like everybody gets super excited about rainbow babies
Mhm.
and babies after loss. And I want to hear what your experience was and why it was tough.
Yeah. Just the decision to
Mm,
have another baby
yes.
was very hard. We knew that we wanted another baby, but just like trying to mentally prepare myself
Yeah.
for that was like so difficult, so emotional, because I'm terrified of going through the exact same thing that we went through with
Of
Adrian.
course.
And and I had thoughts of, we wanted a girl. That was Adrian was our girl. And so I was battling with all these different thoughts of like, if we get pregnant and we find out we're having a boy, I will feel cheated of
That you didn't
ever
get.
having a girl.
Yeah.
But if we have a girl, I don't want it to ever feel like she is replacing Adrian.
Right.
And that is a hard, and it's, I don't feel that way anymore. But I think grappling with that at first was difficult. And when we found out that we were having a girl, we were so excited and like, yes, this is our girl that we want. And then there's that little nugget of fear that like,
Yeah.
I don't want her to replace Adrian. And of course, she doesn't. We haven't forgotten Adrian, but
Yep.
you feel all sorts of different things when you're going through a pregnancy after loss, and it's just your emotions are heightened, and I don't know. I was an emotional wreck the entire time.
Yeah.
The pregnancy itself was really smooth. That was my smoothest pregnancy I've had, like, physically,
Oh,
symptom-wise, like,
really?
I
Even
felt the
better.
best, even better than the other ones, like, I was just able to, like my other 2 pregnancies, I was pretty inactive. I didn't exercise a lot, like, I was just tired and sore all the time.
Yeah.
But with this last pregnancy, I kept up with working out, and that helped me feel better physically.
Yes.
And I think that I really needed that because the mental side of things was so difficult
Yeah.
because I felt like at any moment things could go wrong, and it didn't feel like we ever had, like, there was no spot in our timeline that I ever, like, there was no safe point. Like, as soon as we reach X amount of weeks, we'll be safe because we lost Adrian at 38 weeks.
Yeah.
So, I gotta get to 38 weeks, like, and the closer that we got to 38 weeks, the scarier it got because we
Yeah.
were closer to having her here, but we're also like, she could still be gone,
Yep.
and it could just be exactly like Adrian all over again,
Yeah.
and it was very hard, and I don't again, like, I if I hadn't experienced this, I wouldn't understand how other people deal with it, how they feel,
Yeah.
and so I think that maybe a lot of other people don't understand what it's like unless they go through it or unless they're really close with somebody who has. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize just how difficult
Yeah.
a pregnancy after loss can be.
They just see the end result. They
Mhm.
just see,
"You got your
"You
baby."
got your baby," and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, we definitely got our baby, but it is so difficult to
Yeah.
navigate that. Yeah, because there I when you said, "There's so many things that you're feeling," and I was like, "Yes, guilt and
Right.
fear," and, like, there's just so many things, and you're like,
Uh-huh.
"This is not the way usual pregnancies go," I'm pretty sure.
Right. Some of those feelings are rational, some of them are
Yes,
irrational.
completely, and you're like, I feel like I don't have any control over this," and
Yeah.
it is difficult to navigate, and I also know, if I'm not mistaken, that, Sylvie had a little bit of a rough start too,
Yeah.
so that probably was
Yeah.
fear. I would be so scared. I just am like, "Oh my
Oh my
gosh, she's
gosh.
been through so much."
Yeah. Again, like, didn't go the way that we wanted.
Yeah.
She's great now. She's
Mhm.
healthy, she's fine, but, the entire pregnancy, our finish line was getting her here, like,
Yes.
and then you
Yes.
just assume that everything is gonna be fine and dandy, like, n no problems are gonna arise, and again, like, you don't think about this stuff because it hasn't happened to you yet, just like the stillbirth, like, I never anticipated having a stillborn baby because I had no reason to. With Sylvie, I had no reason to anticipate, like, she ended up being life flighted to primary to the primary children's. It was like an emergency. She was having issues with her digestive system, and,
Oh,
she was there for a week. Things were, they fixed the issues that she had. She came back home for 2 days, and then we very
once
quickly
again.
realized that she was not okay, and so we had to go back, and then she was there for, like, 3.5 weeks.
Oh,
And, yeah, I was not prepared for that, and
yes.
I never understood how other parents must feel when their babies end up in the NICU until I went through it myself, and it was very hard. It just felt like, when Sylvie was life flighted from the hospital initially, she was life flighted 48 hours? No,
After sh
48, 36, maybe 36 hours after I'd
Oh,
had her. So I was still in the hospital, I was still
yeah.
recovering, and again, I had to be discharged from the hospital
Without
without a baby,
Oh,
and it was this horrible
yeah.
mirroring of my last experience having
I
a baby.
yeah,
And so I'm 2 months postpartum now, which is it's still early, but I'm doing immensely better
yeah,
than I was earlier on. Felt a lot of anxiety, I felt a lot of stress.
yeah.
And I remember telling Parker, like, I don't want a dead baby again. Like,
Yeah,
I can't do this again.
yeah. I just am I did not realize that she was life flighted too. That is
Mm.
that I can't I don't wanna imagine that. I don't wanna imagine that, like, that is
And
so, so hard.
I feel terrible because I never really understood the gravity of that kind of situation
Yes.
until I went through it. And so now I think about other people I know who have had their babies in the NICU, or
Yeah.
you always, I don't know, social media, you always see somebody who has a baby who has maybe a rough start to life. Or I always just thought, oh, well, I'm so glad that they were
They
sent
got
to the
out,
NICU
yeah,
and
and
that they're getting the help that they need, without any kind of understanding that
yes,
this is devastating for the parents and so scary. And
yes. Well, and
ugh,
also, I'm gonna just say this is probably I know where Primary Children's is hospital, in relation to where you guys are at, and they have, they have Harrison as well, so I can imagine, like, a little bit of a logistical nightmare too of, like,
right.
who's gonna be with Sylvie up in Primary Children's, who's gonna
Yeah.
be with Harrison. I
Yes, again,
just
it was like the Adrian situation where
yeah,
Harrison was kind of being passed from
yeah,
grandparents back and forth. And with Sylvie again, he was being passed back and forth between grandparents and cousins, aunts
families,
and
yeah,
uncles, like, and our family stepped up and they did so much to help us and support us. So I'm so grateful for that. But again, it's just another hard situation
yeah,
of balancing, like, kind of the menial things of life with, like, really heavy stuff.
yeah. That is yeah, yet again, another instance of that weird juxtaposition of
Right.
daily life and big, big things, big things.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Rebecca, this has been such a interesting and fun conversation about your grief and about Adrian and how you guys have navigated that. I wanted to ask if you had any last advice that you wanted to give to anybody that might be going through
Mm.
this time.
I would just say, let yourself feel all of the things. I know that some people feel like they have to bottle things up, or they scared to, for whatever reason, they feel uncomfortable
Yeah.
letting themselves feel the things that they need to feel. But don't push that down. Don't swallow it down. Let yourself feel it. Let it come out. Like, let yourself have, like, really hard moments,
Yeah.
because that's part of healing. That's what I found anyway. And there's a quote, it's by, like, an Austrian poet.
Mhm.
His name is Rilke, I think.
Oh,
So
yes.
I know, yeah, it's at the end of the movie Jojo Rabbit.
Uh-huh.
I love that. It's, like, one of my favorite movies.
Uh-huh.
I'm not, like, a literary, like, scholar
I
at
have
all.
I have a copy of his, like, letters.
Oh, see,
Yeah.
you are then, because
No,
I am not.
well, it's because he talks a lot about grief.
Yeah, yeah, and he says, I don't remember exactly how it goes, but it kinda, the idea of it floats in my mind. It's something like, "Let every let everything happen to you, beauty and terror, and, like, no feeling is final," basically.
Mm,
So let it happen, like, let yourself experience the horrible things, but allow yourself to experience the beautiful and enjoyable things of life,
yeah,
and no feeling is final. Just remind yourself that you are not gonna be stuck in the depths of despair forever. And I'm in this, like, Facebook support group, where every so often the admins will kind of, give a welcome to the new people who have joined the group. And it's a very sweet but somber kind of post that's like, we're so sorry you're here, but this is the best community to feel like you're understood and that you're
yeah,
loved. And anyway, each time a new set of people are welcomed into the group, my heart sinks, because I remember that
yeah,
feeling of being just, like, at your lowest low, like, absolutely miserable, that, like, pit in your stomach. And I know that must be how those people feel. And I just want people to realize that that's not final. Like, you will feel better. I didn't think that I was gonna feel better at the beginning, but I did, and I think that that's important for people to realize that that's on the horizon. However long it takes to get there, you're not gonna feel that way forever.
Oh, thank you. That was a beautiful way to end. I'm like, "Oh." I will try and get a copy of that, quote and put it in the show notes,
Yes,
so
yeah. It I didn't say it, like, exactly
no,
right.
I'm like, I'm like, "I gotta go find that quote now."
Yeah, it's great. I should probably have it memorized if I like it so much.
Yeah. Well, Rebecca, thank you. Thank you so much again for coming on today
Of
and talking
course.
about Adrian and just spending the time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.